All right, it's been a minute. We are back. I've been sitting on this video for a while. I shot this about 3-4 months ago and I've been contemplating whether to drop it or not. Now look, I'm splitting it all, my 2024 recap. I'm going to show you how we took MTRX Media from 0 to 7 figures a year, 0 to 25 people on the team. And I can't lie, it's funny because this Q2 or this 2025 would be tough. I'll be real with you. It's been one of the hardest years for me personally, but most importantly, one of the hardest years from a metric standpoint. So much happened in 2024 and the success of 2024 was so crazy, almost I think unimaginable for me and my partner, that I guess I expected 2025 to be 10x more, as you're going to see, but so far it's been crazy. I've been burnt out, I've been flogged anyways. But in true form, in true fashion of documenting, I really wanted to drop this. I know it's super late, but better late than ever. But anyway, go enjoy this 45-minute, 50-minute video, and I'll catch you on the other side. And let me say goodbye.
3rd of Jan 2024, I reveal to the world my next business.
3rd of January 2024.
Which was MTRX Media. Some people come, some people go. 5x your revenue in a year. Be able to learn how to hire, be able to learn how to build a culture in your company, and just genuinely be able to make your product and your service delivery better month on month. The whole reason why we're able to grow to this point was just being able to try everything and just trial and error. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't, how do we make it get better? And if it did work, how can you improve the product? 2024 was the craziest, wildest, and mentalist year of my life. We just closed December at 15.25 revenue. Exactly a year later, December 2024, we closed out at around 200k in revenue. I had this spark, I had this feeling in my head that if I don't document this journey right now, it might be something I regret a year later. All right, it's the 3rd of Jan 2025. Now exactly this time last year, 3rd of Jan 2024, I revealed to the world my next business, which was MTRX Media. Now I exposed my whole story in the last 5 years, from affiliate marketing to trading to crypto to creative agency to a website agency. Everything, I have done it all. Now we landed on our final and hopefully what I was wanting to think like would be my last business or last business model. Now, how has it gone in the last year, you may be wondering. You may be seeing the videos on YouTube, the videos on Twitter, the videos on Instagram. I've been putting out content nearly every single day, every single week, every single month. I essentially made a promise to you guys. I made a promise to the world to document this journey and give it one last shot and just focus. If you remember on my last video, I said I'm just going to focus on one thing and one thing only. So you might be thinking, where are we now? 1 year later, what happened? Well, I'm going to reveal it all. And in this exact book, I have my 2024 business goals, and I'm going to go through every single one and we're going to find out if we hit at least one of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them. So stick around and watch out, because 2024 was the craziest, wildest and mentalist year of my life. So the question is, did we live what we rap or did we cap? Let's find out. That was a fucking bar. That's such a bar, mate. Bars, mate. So look, when we made this video, 3rd of Jan 2024, we just closed December at 15.25 revenue. Exactly a year later, December 2024, we closed out at around 200k in revenue. Yes, you heard it right, 6 figures in revenue. And again, this time last year, we had 2 team members, 1 senior video editor and one other video editor. Now, as of today, 3rd of Jan 2025, we sit at 25 team members, halfway to 50. And yesterday, we just onboarded 5 new employees. Now, these employees range from creative strategists to editors to more senior roles such as management and head of talent. The list goes on, but let me tell you, this journey wouldn't be the same without this team. But listen, before we get into all of that, I want to break down month by month, quarter by quarter, exactly what happened, what went well, what went wrong, what we learned, and how you can maybe potentially apply this to your business or your agency. So let's jump straight into it. All right, so before we go into month by month, one of the first business goals I had in this very own book right here, which I made these goals around the end of December 2024, was make £500,000 in revenue minimum. Now we did hit that. Now the number I will reveal at the end. And let's go into Jan, which was our first proper month really running metrics up. Now, obviously, if you remember, from around December time, the momentum was super high. I decided to basically document this whole thing to the world. And I actually started my daily videos up on Twitter, if you remember. And if you follow me on Twitter, we hit day 365 around 2 weeks ago. So every single day, without a single day missed, I posted on Twitter, regardless of the day, regardless of what happened. even if on a Sunday I was doing F all, a video came out every single day. Now, if you follow me on there, you'll also be able to see every single month, I recapped how each month went. So I'm going to quickly go through that. So January was like the first month of the year. There's no way you can flop the first month of the year because that's crazy. And in January, we closed at around 20K in revenue. And it was our first proper chance of trying our new business model, which was high production. Now, high production with one of the brands we're still working with to this day, 12 months later, Primal Queen. They're a beef organ supplement based in America. And you know what? Before I even get into Primal Queen, as a little snippet or a little nugget to let you know about, we scaled them from 50K to multiple 8 figures. And I'll reveal that number later on. Now, you may be asking, how did I even manage to land a brand like Primal Queen? They were, again, a brand, e-com brand based in America. They were currently making around $50,000 a month in revenue. How the hell do they know about MTRX Media? How do they know about me and my partner Hamza? So like I said, we were documenting online, sharing as much as we can about us, about the agency, and just trying our best to get leads. One of the brands we started working with was, again, if you remember, Coffee Over Cardio, formerly known from the owners of Ovi, who are also based in America, another supplement brand. And we've done some work with them off the cuff for free. And long story short, you know, the angle and the idea that we pitched to them got the attention of Primal Queen as well as a few others, which I was able to land us that first deal. Now, that first deal came around mid to end of December, and that basically allowed us to build that momentum up. We couldn't quite frankly believe it that we had, you know, around 5 figures running our account without a single sales call, by the way. I'll make that very clear. We didn't get on one sales call to close this deal. It was a straight deal closed via Twitter DMs. And that was just the start of the journey. Like I said, I had this spark, I had this feeling in my head that if I don't document this journey right now, it might be something I regret a year later, because hey, it was selfishly something for me to see in years to come, or even like I said, where we are right now, a year later. Did we live what we rap? So that was kind of January. So in January, like I said, it was about laying the foundations, building what was to be potentially the biggest and best agency. But it's like, how do we do this? Where do we even start? How do we build a team? How do we hire? How do we even get more brands? How do we keep the momentum and essentially not let this slip and not go from 100 to 0? Now, if you remember from previous videos, I preach a lot about coaching and mentorship. One of our mentors was Amar. I went to see Amar around December time, and exactly what he said I will pull up right now. So one thing he said to me was, if you keep the momentum and focus and don't lose it, that you don't realize that how soon you can be hitting 50K a month. He said this around the end of December, beginning of Jan. And a whole month later, we hit exactly that number. Before I get into that, why January was so important, because it was the building blocks of the whole year and essentially of the whole quarter. It meant that you're kind of like, everyone says this and it's a bit cringe, but your mind, body and soul was like ready to attack this, because to get to the level that we were trying to get to, we couldn't really be doing what we were doing 6 months before this. And that's like more like from a personal level. So it really meant that our whole lifestyle had to change from, you know, being in the office early, waking up early and having some sort of routine. So from all of that January momentum, that was built up from our mentorship back in December. We had 2-3 months of mentoring with Amar, and that allowed us to really get to that stage in January. And we closed off January with around 19 sales calls. Now, don't ask me who these brands were, but we spoke to a lot of brands and closed around 3 at the time, which is when we hit our 20K revenue for January. So overall, January was just the start of something. It was about getting the reps in. It was about producing as much content, but most importantly, delivering for our brands and finding brands and keeping that momentum up. Because again, you know, anyone can do things for 1 month, for 1 day, but can they be consistent and do it for 1 year, 10 years? So in February, we shot to 50K to get straight to it, and we decided to head to Dubai. Now, there was an event on in Dubai which we wanted to network and kind of meet different brands, and that's what we did. So we headed to Dubai for around 2 to 3 weeks, and we just locked in. And like I said, we shot to 50K by the end of the month, but at this point, we still had around 2 editors. We had just onboarded a part-time copywriter, but essentially me and Hamza were still very much in the business, and at this point we still didn't have enough people in the team to be able to keep up with the capacity and the bandwidth. But for us, naively, we wanted to just take on every single brand, and because of how risky we are as people and within the agency, we just thought, you know, we'll just learn it along the way. Now at the time, although that really burnt us and was a regret, looking back on it, it was probably the best thing we'd done, because it threw us into the deep end and made us have to realize, oh, well, how do we do this? How does this work? Let's just learn on the job. And that's exactly what we done. So we learned a lot. Systems broke. We got heavily burnt out. And it's funny because the start of February started on such a high, and then the end of February started on quite a low. Start of February, you know, we closed around 30 to 40K in deals within literally 2 days, back to back. Me on one day and Hamza on the second day. And when we realized what was at stake from a revenue standpoint and to how much we had to deliver for clients, we then also realized how much we don't even have ready yet. Now at this point, again, we had mentorship. Shout out Alex Cooper, and he was helping us with understanding what systems we needed, how to build SOPs, etc. And this was kind of when the calling was right for us to build these systems. So we sat in Dubai, and like I said, we just locked into this apartment for 2-3 weeks. We barely left other than to go out in the evening, and we just built. We started hiring editors on a daily basis. I think at one point we got to like 20 to 25 freelancer editors, all from Upwork, online jobs, Indeed. We took anybody and everyone we could just to be able to accommodate for the deliverables that we had to create and deliver, for brands throughout that month. But like I said, without systems, your business and you're nothing, you're nothing without these systems. So we had to really start from scratch. So we jumped onto Notion, and that's when we started to build our kind of arsenal of MTRX Media on Notion, from dashboards to editor dashboards to copyright dashboards to basically building out the whole ecosystem of metrics. This is when shit got really, really real. So March was a treacherous month. March was my birthday month, and naturally on the first week of the month, I was cool, it's my birthday, feeling a bit grateful, blessed. Then I realized what was at stake, and then I realized how much shit we had to do and how much things were just not going our way. So like I said, we got all these systems ready, but things still weren't going our way. We were super, super burnt out from, client deliverables not being done in time, brands not getting what they needed, and essentially almost taking on more than you can chew. We had, I don't know how many clients at the time, but let's just say more than 10, 15, and just not enough team and not enough bandwidth. And that really, again, that really put our backs against the wall and made us question ourselves every single day. What are we doing wrong? How can we solve it? And what are the next steps, and then make sure this never ever happens again. So for me, once March finished, I didn't ever want to see March ever again for that year. It was probably, I'd say, the worst month of the year, and it definitely probably the worst ending to Q1 that we could have. But it was something that needed to happen, and I'm very glad it did happen. Okay, so Q2, April, it was a fresh quarter, a fresh month, and it was about playing catch up here, but still everything went wrong. But the team was slowly starting to roll in. Now, again, if you remember March, so much happened that we didn't want to go through that period again. So we ended up onboarding a project manager and assistant to hopefully offboard that load. And it did, to be honest. For that 1 month, I remember feeling a bit less stressed and a bit more at peace, knowing that things were delegated in a better way and someone was more active on projects rather than just me and Hamza. We went from this point, like I mentioned earlier, around 2 or 3 team members to 12 at this point. So 12 mainly editors who are also freelancers all came in out of nowhere. Because again, like I said, we needed the bandwidth, we needed the deliverables. That was the most important part of that month, just complete what needed to get completed on time. And that kind of boils down to my next part of it. When we were hiring, we didn't know really how to hire. We had no hiring process. We didn't have any SOPs in place. In fact, when we hired our project manager, we didn't even know what was the role of that project manager. What did they need to carry out on a daily basis? So a lot of it was very hood ratty, but to get to the point we were now, we had to do these things back then to understand roles and to understand, most importantly, the hiring processes. And last but not least, one of the big realizations for me in April was being very mindful with the brands we took on. So from the shit shows that we had in the last 2 months prior to that, we realized how important it was being selective with the brands that we wanted to work with. But the truth was, at that time, we were in no position to be able to pick and choose what brands we wanted to work with, because essentially we needed the revenue, right? At this point now, like I said, we've gone from 3 members to 12 members, which meant increase in staff costs, increase in operational costs. How are we even going to pay the staff, and how are we going to keep up with the upkeep of revenue versus operational costs? And then we closed out April around 30k in revenue, which again, if you remember, was a decrease from what we'd done in February. And for me and Hamza was a kind of failed mission. All right, so May, we move into summertime. Now for me personally, summer is one of those weird seasons in my life where I fall off. Every summer in the last few years, you get excited with the weather, people, motives, whatever. And it's an easy opportunity to go from 100 to 0. So I made it a public goal to make sure that didn't happen in summer. So like I said, for me personally, May was like a personal month of mine that I wanted to make sure I got right. And funny enough, on the first day, we closed a $20,000 deal, which was amazing. And that set the momentum, that set the bar high, to be honest. It set the bar high because it meant that, okay, cool, well, this is our chunk of revenue is here right now. How can we utilize that well enough, and how can we also increase that revenue to maybe get to the mark of 50k like we did in February? Now at this point, like I said, with the numbers coming in, going up and down, a lot of things went wrong in this month. So we went from such a high on the first day to, again, quite a low on the end spectrum of May. We now hired 2 creative strategists. At this point, like I said, we already had 1, but we needed to fill the void of bandwidth and really fast get these 2 creative strategists to come in. Now, these 2 creative strategists we hired from Upwork. Now, based on their interviews, based on the conversation we had, we thought they were the perfect person and the right caliber for our team and for what we were trying to build, with was culture, which I'll get onto later in this video of how important culture of your team is. Now, these 2 CSs came on, long story short, after 2-3 weeks, we had to get rid of them. Now, I guess the takeaway from this is when you're hiring, do your due diligence and make sure you really understand the people that you're bringing on. Anyone can say they work for this person, they have this experience, they've done this, they've done that, but until they actually join your team and join into their role, you have to stress test them so much before to make sure you don't fall into their problems. But again, like with everything is a lesson. So when we went through that problem, I can confidently say now to this day, we've never made that mistake again. And you could probably argue if we didn't do that then, we may have gone through that problem sometime a few months later into 2024. So before these 2 CSs were on their way out and we had the inkling that, they weren't really going to last long at all, we went through the applications that we put out on Upwork and we had to figure out, okay, cool, is there anyone here that maybe potentially could be replaced for them? But at this point, we already sent our kind of regards to everyone to say, hey, thank you, but no thank you, you didn't get the role. Now, there's one person that stood out throughout this whole application process who's still with us to this day, and his name is Jonah from South Africa, who's our creative strategist, copywriter. He's been with us now since May, June time, and he reached out to my partner Hamza, offering essentially how he could go band for band with the other 2 CSs in the company at the time. And instead of saying, hey, listen, I'll jump on for, $2,000, $3,000 part-time, let me just show you what I can do, he offered to work with us for free just to really show what he could do. Now for us, again, the caliber that we have for people jumping on board in Metrics today is just being able to really want the job. Obviously, money means a lot to a lot of people, but at the same time, if you're able to prove yourself before the money comes, that means a lot to us. And obviously, at the time we were at, we're spending a lot of money with staff, revenue was coming in also, but at the same time, revenue was coming out. So to have Jonah come in and offer his hand and say, hey, I will work for free and I will show you how I'm basically able to replace these 2 people, like watch and learn. And that's exactly what he did. He was able to replace them 2 people. And a couple of weeks later, they then obviously had to leave. And then he then replaced their role. And he was our new official 2nd creative strategist on MTRX Media. So to wrap up May, from a revenue standpoint, the goal was 75K. And obviously we didn't hit it. We hit around 40K. And at this point, it was time to plan the next 120 days. So again, around May time, 120 days would have taken us to September 2024. Now, we planned out some very, very ambitious goals, and we're going to find out on my phone if we got to them later on in the video. But let's move on to June. June was what we like to call the crash out month. Now, if you remember earlier, I said, look, summer is the time where I crash out. I go from 100 to 0 because you've got all these different things happening, motive here, party here, weather here, everything. When the weather's hot in UK, which is very rare, you want to take advantage of being outside. And for me, the problem was I couldn't afford to be outside because, frankly, we didn't have the cash to even do that. Now at this point, we're sitting in June in the office, figuring out how we can get back to the days where we felt good. The days in June, in February, when the momentum was high, when the revenue was solid, 40K, 50K revenue, when just things felt good. Because right now, I just felt like almost a burnout from March was still happening. Like, as much as it was still something that we were grateful for, and obviously I was still at this point, remember, document every single day, something just wasn't hitting for us, and it just wasn't working. Now at this point, if you remember Primal Queen Abdu, now I reached out to Abdu to say, hey, we're going to head to America and we're going to shoot some content. If you're down, let's catch up. He actually said, hey, I'm going to be getting married. Why don't you head to Uzbekistan? Now, fun fact, I've never met this guy, never spoke to this guy on call, never seen his face other than on Slack. So quite frankly, I don't know who the hell this guy is. All I know is this is someone that pays us money every single month to make his ad creatives, and somehow we're getting him very, very good results. So he asked me, hey, come to Uzbekistan, you and Hamza. Cool, consider it done. Within less than 24 hours, we booked our tickets, and a week later, we were on our way to Uzbekistan. And I guess that was a very interesting trip. Now, again, going to Uzbekistan, me and Hamza knew nobody. The founders of Primal Queen were there, and these founders, we never met them before. We never spoke to them on call before. We didn't really know much about them other than just through Slack, almost just call it internet friends. So Uzbekistan, obviously, naturally was a wedding, so it was time to kind of enjoy ourselves. meet the team, and also meet, Abdu's friends and family. Now, again, if you remember at this point, our team was slowly growing, but we were at no point or no level to be able to essentially leave and not be online or present for 3-4 days. Now, we didn't know that was going to be the case, but going to someone like Uzbekistan, things were very up in the air from data to Wi-Fi. And obviously having a wedding and not knowing the schedule, things really went from 0 to 100 from the day we landed. Now, although we thought we had it on lock and we thought, well, hey, we've got a project manager, we've got an assistant, surely this is a great time to test it. Hell, were we wrong, because it really didn't work in our favor at all. And like I said, for about 6 to 7 days, we were pretty much offline, and that was the first time in the whole of the year we were pretty much physically offline, because we had no choice with the internet and not being able to get service, that we had to just rely and hope for the best that when we come back home or when we've got some sort of data, things were getting done. But it was one of the risks that we had to take, right? It was like, okay, cool, if we're here right now, there's generally no time to even jump in on Slack or whatever else. And it's kind of one of those where you go to someone's wedding and someone we never met before, especially a client, you have to be as present as possible, right? So that's what we've done. And to be honest, hats off to the team at the time, project managers, assistant, were able to hold the fort down. And even when we looked back at it like a few weeks later into June, things weren't as bad as we thought. So June, we were back in the trenches and we hit 30K, which again, saying that out loud and to other people sounds like, well, it's crazy and it's amazing. And it was. But when you put the pressure on yourself every single month and you go from, 15 to 20 to 50 within the space of 3 months to then drop down from your all-time high, it hurt us. It hurt us a lot. Being in Uzbekistan and having an amazing time that we did, and as great as it was like, okay, it's back to the drawing board. It's back with our back against the walls. How are we going to somehow end this month on a high? So I guess saying we were going to end the month on a high, I didn't realize it was going to mean our car was going to be in flames. Now, towards the end of the month, we decided to run up, obviously, our high production shoots and go to London as often as we can to essentially just get back into work mode. Now, at this point, we were driving a Toyota Yaris, and this Toyota Yaris was a car that was ready on his last legs, basically. Now, if I give you a bit of a story time, we're on the motorway on our way to London. And I'm just sitting in the passenger, as you do. And I smelled something fishy in the car. Almost just picture like a smoky, musky smell. I was like, what's this smell? Anyway, 2 seconds later, just imagine black, thick smoke coming from the air vents. And a realization that this might be the end of life. This might be the day that we die. Now, not even exaggerating. Seriously, not even exaggerating. Like, just imagine being a car filled with smoke and you turn to your right and the car's on flames. The right side of the engine is literally on flames. You've got cars all around you beeping you like, we are blinded, don't know the car that's actually on fire. And then realizing, hold on, how are we going to get out of this car? Now, we're on the left-hand side of the motorway, and to the left of me is the slip road, which also has been filled with cones, which obviously was preventing us from moving to the left-hand side. Now, as we're driving, or shall I say, as Hamza's driving, we see a service station right in front of us into the slip road. But at this point, the car has malfunctioned. The car has no life left. Hamza is pressing on the brakes and the car is not braking. Hamza is trying everything possible and nothing is happening. At this point, we're just coughing and there's black smoke in the car. And I'm just thinking, yep, this is it. Like, how are we dying on our worst month of the year? That's crazy. And anyway, long story short, managed to pull up the handbrake and somehow get out of the car as it was still moving. Jumped out the car, turn around, see my bag, pick my bag up, and look back, and I just see the car in flames. Now, if I just throw up a few videos and a few pictures, you'll see. Now, at this point, I guess we didn't realize what was about to happen. And fast forward 20 minutes later, this is what the car looked like. Now, during this time, it was a realization that Hamza left his bag in the back of the car and he had his laptop, and we also left a product for the shoot that we had the next day. Now, the problem was, we've just had a bit of a crash out month, and now are we going to crash out again and not make it to London to do this shoot, which was in less than 24 hours? So Hamza decided to go get his bag back from the car as it was in flames. And I'm shouting from a distance, yo, go get the product, go get the product. He didn't even hear me, but fair play to him. He was thinking what I was thinking and still managed to get the product. Now, the problem is we're back to a movie scene right now. So let's just put some dramatic music in right now. He picks up his bag. He comes out of the back of the car and he has a product in his hands and he drops the product on the floor. Now, I'm just thinking right now, I've watched these movies. I've played GTA 5. The product's going to be dropped on the floor. The car's going to blow up. He's going to be dead. I'm liable. It's game over. Anyway, luckily that didn't happen. The product dropped on the floor. He picked it up and proceeded to walk my way. And it was good. It was happy days. And I guess at this point, the car was still on flames. The whole of the motorway is locked off. We locked off the service station for about 4 hours. And fun fact, if your car ever does blow up, you know, you go to service station, they give you free McDonald's, so that was cool. So free McDonald's, and then at this point we were figuring out how do we get to London. Again, we blocked off the whole service station, we blocked off the whole motorway, so no one actually physically can come to us to rescue us and pick us up. Now, funny story was this random guy who owned a Porsche Taycan electric was able to get inside the service station to charge his car 3 hours later and offered us kindly to take us to London. And again, I thought, you know what, this guy's either gonna just, I don't know, it just felt a bit sus. But at this point I was like, listen, we're about to die in this. If we die now, it's all right, it's okay. Anyway, long story short, we ended up in London, and the next day, 12 hours later, we successfully shot for our American brand Durasize, and it was a good shoot. And at the end of the day, it was a good story. But like I said, that really put this into perspective. Now, weirdly, I believe in everything after a reason, and I do feel like as crazy as that story was, and as crazy as that moment was of literally nearly dying and realizing, wow, we just basically got another life. It had to happen. We come into July and we basically decided, listen, we will never, ever get to that point in metrics or in our lives again. And if anything, that is a lesson, and that is a reason and a calling from God to say, listen, we're just giving you one more chance. Now don't go fuck it up, and don't be silly, and don't be complacent, because everything I used to say at this point was kind of falling off. You know, imagine if you remember at the start of the year, I had this momentum, I had this energy, you know, in the YouTube video that I dropped in January 2024, I had this spark. All of a sudden, you know, in 6 months into the year, I'm slowly falling off. Like I said, if you remember 5 minutes ago, when I hit May, I said personally to everybody online, you know, the summertime is coming up, I'm not going to fall off. But I felt myself obviously clearly slowly falling off. You know, June was Uzbekistan, and bam, the car blew up. So for us, it was a kick up the ass to really run it up. And that's when we go into July. So just to recap, we're about to go into Q3. Now, again, Q2 was what we thought was going to be a good quarter, if anything better than Q1. You know, Q1 was our best quarter at the time. Q2 was the worst quarter of the year, and it was very humbling to say the least. You know, from 20-30k revenues to nearly dying, to going to Uzbekistan, having the greatest time of your life, then realizing, hold on, there's so much stuff we still need to do, to, hey, your team is just not there at all. We're not hiring the right people. We don't even know how to hire. Who do we hire? Too many problems. So before we go into Q3, let's look at one of the goals that we put down at the end of 2023, which was have a team of 5 or more. Now, at this point, we were averaging roughly around the headcount of 13 people in MTRX Media. So we can tick that one off as something that we achieved. And actually, at this point, the 13th member was our third creative strategist, who again is still with us to this day. Shout out Elena. Elena is also from South Africa and someone that has made a huge impact in MTRX Media. So like I said, June was the worst month of our lives. Q2 was the worst quarter of our lives. How are we going to make up for it? How are we going to make sure this never happens again? How am I going to make sure that the promise I made to the public, which no one probably even seen it, which was make summer one to remember and not one that you just fall off? So I guess before we go into the nooks and crannies of July, we ended up hitting just shy of 6 figures a month. And again, of course, if you remember the numbers from before, that was our best month, and it was something that finally worked and hit for us. And it meant a lot because it started Q3 on such a high, intense, momentumous kind of like feeling. It was like, okay, cool, wow. We had such a shit Q2. We had really just the worst months, month to month, and just things not going the way we wanted. And now we've entered the first month of Q3 in just a very just high frequency level. So at this point, it was about reaching out to brands and figuring out who can we talk to, who are we able to close, and just it's time to get new business, right? It's a new quarter, which means new business. So I kind of like to switch up the way I was reaching out to brands. So obviously, if you remember, I'll be documenting every day, posting here on YouTube every so often, but the content game slipped off a bit slightly because, you know, tying that into a really shit Q2, it just meant that my content game was just weak and it was off. So I decided to go down a different approach of cold email. So if you remember from my old videos, I used to do a lot of cold email back in the early days of MTRX, you know, sending 300-400 emails a day to brands. And I got better at writing email copy and understanding what makes people want to reply back to you. And I guess, first of all, before we get into it, the key into getting cold emails right is the follow-ups. Your first email could be great, but that person's not going to reply to you because A, they don't know who you are, they don't really care for you, and you're just another cold emailer. And yeah, the key is follow-ups. And the way I approached this differently in July was I had a list of brands that I physically, personally wanted to work with based on just me knowing them through social media. So I had a list of, I think, 10 or 15 brands that I thought, you know what, if we can close at least one of these guys, that will allow us to open doors to, whatever region it is or whatever niche it is. So one of these brands was Simmer Eats. Now, Simmer Eats is a personal brand of mine who I've been following through social media for at least 6 months into 2024. And I thought, you know what, let me test, my cold email. I've been out of the game for a while. I've been out of the game of even reaching out to people on a fresh kind of email. Let's just see what can happen from there. And I sent an email out, no response. Sent a second email out, then I got a response. That second email I'll throw up here is what got Simi from Simmer Eats to reply. And long story short, after 3 weeks later, we closed a deal and we ended up working with him on a high production deal. And again, for me, that set the momentum super, super high. You went from, July gearing up to be a really, really good month and, a really solid start to Q3 to now having Simmer Eats, a personal brand favorite of mine, work closely with us and be able to perform and produce and direct high production for them in July. And then I guess alongside all of this, the momentum, the kind of realization that, okay, maybe we're getting back to what we need to, or what we've promised ourselves to get back to. And we ended it off pretty strongly. Like I said, team of 13, we hit just under shy of 6 figures, give or take 80 to 90K revenue. And the bar was set high. At this point, I've met a few people, even went to an event and just realized a lot and realized, hold on, people are slowly hearing about MTRX Media. They're understanding who we are as an agency. They're seeing the content I'm putting out. They're seeing the content my partner's putting out. And we're slowly starting to gain the respect in the industry that, okay, this is gearing up to be a very, very good Q3. So August, it was back to the drawing board. Now, if you remember, it's still summertime. It's still, in my head, fun time. How can we become and sustain to be a 6-figure agency? What do we need to be doing? What are the foundations we need to be putting into place? And how we use the momentum from July to apply this to August to be able to end our quarter off really strong. September was approaching. What are we going to be doing? So the goal was simple. August was setting the foundations and getting ready to end Q3 very, very strong. And the goal was very, very simple. It was, listen, 100K or die trying. I'll throw up the screenshots right now when me and Hamza were chatting on WhatsApp. All right, listen, we had a good July. We had an okay August. But hey, although our revenue dropped and although you could argue numbers weren't the best, we now spent this month laying down the foundations, understanding how to hire, building a whole hiring process, which I'm going to pull up here, understanding the key hires we need to make, and realizing what we need to be focusing on. And I guess outside of all of this, August was kind of the reflection time. It's realizing, hold on, we're like 6, 7, however many months into 2024. And it was roughly nearing 2 years into metrics, actually, which is very important to mention. And I was like, hold on, although we've gone down from the numbers we had in July, we're actually at a very solid point when it comes to how far we've grown the business, because 2 years before then, we were making zero bit of cash. Like, we had no income coming in. We had no clients. No one even knew who the hell we are. We got zero respect, zero aura, whatever you want to call it. Nobody knew who the hell MTRX Media were. And in fact, we were nobody because the business model that we were running 2 years ago was nothing to what we're doing to this day. So realizing in August, okay, cool, we take a step back. It doesn't mean every month you have to scale. I think that's an important thing. The problem we were finding is we felt like we had to scale every month and we felt like we had to hit this crazy number every month. I know that is good for a pressure standpoint. It also isn't really sustainable because you soon realize going from 0 to 25K, cool. Going from 25 to 50K, very hard. Going from 50 to 100K, even harder. Because if you remember, we've gone from 50K in February, thinking, oh my God, we're going to get 100K in April, to then dropping to 30K, to then dropping to low as 20, to then going back up to 90, to then going back down to 50. So now you can imagine hitting the 6-figure revenue mark is not easy at all. So being able to spend that time in August to really, really understand and lay the foundations down was the pinnacle moment for us being able to unlock them 6 figures. Because what comes after that is the 6 figures get hit and then it's about being able to maintain it. And it's almost like I said earlier on in the video, someone can do it for 1 month, maybe 2 months. And can they do it for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and for as long as possible? That's where it really gets a challenge. So like I said, we go into the end of the quarter of Q3, we go into September. Now, September, so much happened in this month. And to be honest, I'm probably going to miss a few things out because it was just crazy. But I guess a TLDR was we went from 3-4 shoots a month to all of a sudden over 10 in one single month. It was crunch time. It was 100K or die trying. Can we hit that 6-figure mark? And the question to everyone was, can we hit 6 figures by the end of Q3? Find out in the next recap, which was obviously the end of September. And to get straight to the point, yes, we did. We hit them 6 figures, and that was our first 6 figures of 2024. And it was a weird one. It kind of felt crazy to even get to that point, being able to grow from 0 to 6 figures in less than 8-9 months, you could argue is kind of unheard of. And I guess the growth of not just our revenue numbers also meant the growth of our team went from 0 to, at this point, I believe 15 to 16 team members. So all of a sudden, we've hit our running up 50k revenue monthly, and now we've also hit the team of hitting a team over 5 or more. And also we're nearing that, if you remember from the start of the video, this $500,000 in revenue minimum before the end of the year, or by the end of the year, shall I say. So at this point, most importantly, this notepad and these goals, I'll be honest, I forgot about. And I only actually opened this notepad up at the end or middle of October, which we'll get into in a bit. And that's when I looked at it and I was like, wow, these numbers that we put here are very ambitious. And at the time when I set them at the end of 2023, you could argue, how are you going to hit these numbers when MTRX as a company has nothing? You don't even have any brands. You don't even have, any real income coming in. We hit, okay, cool, we hit like 5 figures, 10k, whatever. But how are you going to go from 10k to then 5x that to then also 5x your revenue in a year? Like, again, to most people, that's unheard of. And at the same time, be able to learn how to hire, be able to learn how to build a culture in your team, in your company, and just genuinely be able to make your product and your service delivery better month on month. How are you meant to do that? And, quite frankly, we didn't know how to do that. But the whole kind of reason why we're able to grow to this point was just being able to try everything and just trial and error. If it worked, it worked. If it didn't, how do we make it get better? And if it did work, how can you improve the product? So at this point, we really bounced back. We bounced back from that Q2 slug of just absolute bullshit that we thought we were going to do really, really well. And, but we did. We were able to turn it on its notch and go from 0 to 100 and finally finish off, that quarter in a way that sets us up really, really nicely for Q4. Now, at this point, we also had this brainwave. Doing all these shoots, we work for like 80% American brands. Why don't I just head to America and run some shoots out there, and maybe Hamza can be here in UK and is able to direct shoots and be able to basically have 2 people in 2 different countries but doing double the work. Like, what's there to lose? Now, again, you could argue, well, you're going to lose a bunch of cash, you're going to lose maybe potentially a bunch of time, and what if things go wrong here, or maybe things go wrong in America? Like, if you've got this momentum, just stay here. But it wasn't something that we wanted to do. So that was in my mind, to potentially go to America. Now, again, no one really knows, but the last time I went to America at this time was around 4 or 5 years ago, just before the pandemic. So for me, I was personally itching to go back to the likes of New York and LA. But then also at that time, it was time to continue to build the team. And one of the biggest kind of roles I need to fill was a personal assistant. At this point, being able to run it to 6 figures a month is, just to, I guess, ourselves and to other people impressive, but it doesn't really mean anything if your systems and your day-to-day isn't in place. And for me personally, my day-to-day really wasn't the best as it could have been. So after speaking to a few people, the suggestion was, let's hire a PA and let's fix the bottlenecks right now, personally, in MTRX. Now, to answer a few things such as admin, filing contracts, sending contracts, making payments, sending payments, and just a day-to-day admin that, I guess, as you grow your role in the agency and me being the founder, things need to then be delegated on to other people. So that was my kind of goal for September, which was looking for a PA, which by the end of the quarter, we were successfully able to hire this PA, which I'll get into later. And I guess outside of the hire, we also made quite a few fires. Now, we realized, obviously, some people come, some people go. And as a team we're growing, it was really important that we were slowly trying to build this culture up in a way that, I guess, again, I asked myself this question at the start of the year: how do we build a culture? Like, what does even culture mean? To build a company is one thing, but to build a team where your team value you as a person, value the company as a person, and want to wake up every day to work on the business that you started 2 years ago, 3 years ago. How do we build that up? So naturally, we're able to build that up for a few things and for a few ideas I had from other friends due to just, that run businesses day to day, which I'll get to towards the end of this video. But as much as hires were made, like I said, fires were made, and these were really important for us to progress to the next stage. So outside of the PA, it was important that we were able to kind of fix up our management side of things. So this is also where we brought on a new PA and just trying to kind of tighten up that area of MTRX, because that still wasn't really there. And at this point, something that a lot of agency owners have been telling me for the last 6 months, and even brands, we decided to finally set up our pod structure. So before this, what we were doing every single day was, would have a brand come on and we will assign it to all the editors or all the copywriters. But then we realized, as we were to scale and as we will continue to scale into 2024 and now 2025, it simply cannot be done without having a structure, which is very simple. In each pod, there is individual people assigned to every single brand. So for example, pod 1 could have 2 editors and 1 copywriter, and then also have their own account manager and a dedicated VA. Pod 2 has the same, so on and so forth. And then in each brand, you can also then figure out how many brands could be in each pod. So let's say, for example, in pod 1, there's 5 brands, and that then means each pod can take on a certain amount of brands per pod. But at this point, we didn't actually set up the structure the way I've just explained it. It was just a case of setting it up because we didn't know how to set it up. We didn't know how the structure should be. And it goes back to, like I said earlier, just trial and error and just trying something and then figuring out along the way. And I guess throughout all of this, like, you know, as great as a month was and we were gearing up to end Q3 really, really nicely, the content on my side was lacking. You know, I still document every single day, but I just wasn't posting as often as I should on YouTube. And the promises I gave myself and even goals I set myself weren't getting hit. So personally, for me, as great as it was doing on that side, the stuff that I needed to get done, which whether it was going to bring leads or value, it wasn't getting produced. So personally, for me, that content side wasn't fulfilled, and that closes out Q3 and what was personally a roller coaster of emotions, going from such a high into the first month of Q3 to a slight low into August, but then realizing, hold on, we don't have to be scaling every single month. You know, we don't need to be hitting 100K straight away. Let's relax. Let's realize, okay, what is broken right now? What can be fixed straight away? What are the systems? What are the processes? How are we able to essentially build these foundations so these problems don't occur later? Like, wouldn't you rather have problems occur right now today than in 5 months time or even in 5 years time? So we spent that August time to really, really knuckle down and focus on what matters. And that then allowed us to obviously progress to end Q3 in a really, really nice way, because we also, may I note, closed like one of the biggest deals, which was like around 40-50K for like one single deal. And we were able to then bounce back from a shit show of Q2 to a very decent, you know, fairly decent at least Q3. So that brings me on to the final quarter of the year, and we go into October. Now, October was, and let me just start, I guess Q4 was a generational quarter. And October started off to be very, very interesting and exciting. Now, if you remember before, I said, you know, for the last 3-4 months, we were building this culture, building this team. You know, we've gone from at this point 0, or shall I say, we've gone from 2 people in the team to now give or take 15 to 16 in metrics full time. How are we able to build this culture up and do something crazy that we promised ourselves at the start of the year? Now, I didn't actually mention this at the start of the video, but around early of this year, we set our goal to essentially take our team away to somewhere crazy and an all paid expenses retreat. At this point, we had these 2 members on our team. So technically no one was really on our team or in our team, but we decided, hey, you know what? Let's just have a really ambitious goal to pull off this team retreat. However many people, whoever it is, wouldn't it be cool to pull off? Now, at this point, we were coming and gearing up to the point where, you know, we hit that 6 figures in revenue. The momentum of the team were high. The momentum of mine and my partners kind of, you know, company goals are really high. Like, this is going to be something that is going to potentially and could potentially work out. So it brings us on to October, Q3. And this is where we made it happen. This is where we decided to start being more high operators rather than being in the business. And this is where we decided to realize, hold on, we need to start delegating and utilizing the team that we have now, you know, brought on in the last 3 to 6 months, and we're paying on a monthly basis. And this is where we unlocked a different way of thinking and a different level of metrics. Now, if you remember from last month, I had the idea of going to America. Well, we're going into October now, and all of a sudden we are in what I like to call the land of opportunity. We've made it back to New York after 4 or 5 years, and little did I know how much was going to change in the business and how much was going to change in my role itself. So if we just take a step back, I've gone from running shoots every single day or every single week in London, going from 2-3 shoots a month to now 10 to 15 every single month for the last couple months. Pretty much living out my suitcase since August, so around, you know, 3-4 months before October. And now suddenly taking a flight, 1-way ticket to New York, and trying to figure out maybe how we could move operations or work on operations in America. Now, I had no plan other than, you're cool, I'm going to go to America and I'm just going to see what happens. And fast forward, you know, 1 month, month and a half into it, I decided to make more content. I decided to shoot more content out there and just essentially be able to be outside of the role that I was doing in UK. Now, what did that do, and how was that like probably the most important month of the whole year? Well, that allowed me to take myself out of my role that I was doing in UK and force me and Hamza to almost switch roles. So it's gone from me directing and shooting to now Hamza directing and shooting, and Hamza learning the ropes of day-to-day production and just day-to-day directing, and being responsible for making sure shoots are still, outputted and edited in a timely manner as if we're both still there. Now that's a lot of pressure for someone to take on, and then me to just go to America and figure out content on other spectrums, right? But that goes back to what I said, the trial and error moment, and also realizing when you put your balls on the line and you just risk and you kind of say, well, listen, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Or hey, if it works, but it doesn't work the way we wanted to, at least we tried. Now the key of this is just trying and getting the reps in. And that's what we've done. And I guess it was a pretty decent success. I mean, it went from October, I believe, being like one of the biggest months in terms of shoots. I think we hit like 15 maybe shoots, give or take, within that single month, including a few things that I'd done in America. And also just a whole 360 in my role. I've went from being in London directing on an almost near daily basis to now just focusing on a few things, which is content and sales. Sales call was something that were coming in here and there, but all of a sudden I saw a shift. And that shift was the more content I was making, the more people were seeing me and reaching out to me for sales calls. Now, when we went to New York, I was able to meet Abdu from Primal Queens again and catch up with him. And actually, he spent a few days with me, and we made some content based on kind of what we've done from the last 12 months. And at the same time, we met Connor, also one of our clients, who's a good friend of mine now, who we do content for his brands such as Essence Vault, Thompson Car, and Liquid London. So these kind of periods of time where we're able to spend time with these, I guess, brand owners / friends, I was able to realize, okay, what are the bigger swings that I can be focusing on? And what are the content pieces that are actually going to make a difference for us and the business? And this is exactly, like I said, where things really, really changed. Now, at this point, if you remember, we were still planning our retreat. And, well, we were figuring out, this is the time now to announce this to the team. Now, again, like at this point, we've got 15, 16 people in the team. We felt very comfortable with everyone on the team. We felt that everyone was doing their role and playing their part very well. And I guess, like I said, we live what we rap. So what we planned at the start of the year, it was about to get executed and publicized to our team. So at this point, we announced our retreat, and I'll play a few clips here. And to be honest, if this video is out already, you would have seen the retreat video on my YouTube channel. So go watch that now if you haven't already. And the story was very simple. We've had a great last 8-9 months into 2024. Things were on the up. Q1 was amazing. Q2 was shit. Q3 was good. And it was the foundations of allowing us to get to 6 figures and basically put things into place to make sure we can be stable within this agency. And now it was about being able to kind of, I guess, potentially reap the rewards of that. And most importantly, meet this team. We're an agency. We're like any typical business, right? We work from home essentially. We've got employees from South Africa, Nigeria, Czech Republic, Canada, Lebanon, like you name it. We most likely have someone working in that country. So for us, it was about meeting people in person. There's only so much calls you can do on a kind of day-to-day basis, but really knowing and understanding this team was really important for us. Like for us, it was like, all right, if this team is going to be with us for the next 1, 2, 3 years, we want to understand them more and learn about them more and just get to know them. So that was our idea of the retreat. So at this point, we've announced the retreat and we said, hey, all expenses paid for, we are heading to Bali. Now at this point, we didn't even have anything booked. We had no flights booked, no Airbnb, nothing. But again, it goes back against the wall. We'll figure it out as we go along. We knew it was going to happen and we knew we had the kind of facilities to do it. It was just about planning it. So obviously at this point, the PA came along and she was able to obviously put this retreat together and plan it, which was a trip of a lifetime, which again, if I haven't said it before, go check out the YouTube video. So at this point, we're ending October at around 20x up in revenue from October 2023, which was, kind of crazy. And I guess a realization that we're still small fish, and it was like, cool, we might be doing these numbers, we may have all this team or brands, whatever, but I guess if you want to compare yourself to other brands or other agencies, you realize, hold on, there's so much more we could be doing. But maybe let's not get ourselves too kind of wrapped up with what other people are doing and focus on what we are doing right now. And that was a goal. So at this point, I'm like 1 month into New York and I've had like the time of my life. I've shot content on a daily basis. I've produced reels. I've met with brand owners. I've done podcasts. I've done everything you can think of was getting done. And I just felt this new kind of spark or this energy inside me of like, okay, wow, the time I missed out on not making content, I'm making up for it now. Okay, cool. The retreat is happening. Let's plan this. All right, the team are aligning us. And the fun fact is, we didn't even know until we got to retreat. I think a lot of people on the team thought this retreat thing was a load of bullshit and it wasn't even going to happen. Because I guess it's very easy for any brand or any agency, any company, any business to promise the world, if you join us, you'll get this perk and that perk. But I think one thing that's very important for us is anything we say we're going to do in the company, we will make sure we do. And if we don't do it, then we're not just going to say we're going to do it, right? It's kind of like I'm mentioning all these points right now, and these are the things I've written in this very book and everything I've written on my notes. And it's like, if you say something and you kind of put it out there into the world, it's important that you try your best to achieve that. So that wraps up October, the first month into Q4, which, you could argue needs to be the best month to start the end of the last quarter of the year. And we ended up roughly around 150-ish, 170-ish K in revenue, which again, if you remember from last time, was a big jump. So, at this point, we're now maintaining them 6 figures. We're now getting to the point where it's not 100K back to 50K, maybe down to 30. It's like, okay, cool, 100K. And we're slowly progressing month on month. Now we go into November. November is only 2 months ago, and if I look back at it now, was a crazy month. And at this point, we're actually closer to 350K than we were to 100K, which is crazy to even say this out loud, because exactly this time last year, November 2023, we just started this whole MTRX Media new fourth business model. We just were finishing closing off our mentorship. We didn't even have Primal Queens at this point, like I mentioned at the start of the YouTube video. So we had no clients. And I think actually, if I remember correctly, we had a brand which we had to refund because they didn't have no cash flow left. So we were really down by it. But it was one of these things where it was like, okay, cool. If we stick at this and we just stay focused on this new fourth potential business model, and we just pick at it and we try, maybe this can work. So just picture that, from November 2023 to now November 2024, you've gone from zero, like absolutely zero in revenue, zero in team, because remember, we didn't even have them 2 people because they came in January, to now being closer to 350K than you were to even 100K. And at this point, we were averaging 17 to 18 full-time team members. And again, the biggest month of our lives, essentially, because this was retreat month. So this was where, the retreat was going to happen. And at this point, we are in our process of booking everything, planning everything. And we're like, I think roughly a couple weeks out until we all head to Bali and for once finally meet everybody in person. And what a trip it was about to be. This was 10 days in Bali in an Airbnb. And I guess we planned out for this to be maybe 50, 40K, and it ended up being shy over 6 figures, but it was probably the best 6 figures we spent within the whole year of 2024. And I mean, a lot of people could argue that why would you spend that much money on your team when you can just almost spend it on yourself? But I think what was important was we were able to build this team and grow this team within less than 12 months. And almost everyone in the team were less than 6 months into MTRX. So that's one thing, imagine joining a company and there was people that were in the retreat that were not even there for 3 months, and now they're in Bali. And I believe 90, maybe even 95% of people, including me, never even went to Bali. So all of a sudden you're in a new country, you may be flying for the first time for some people, and you're actually with everyone that you see near on a day-to-day basis. And I guess the whole idea of this retreat wasn't to work, wasn't to really do anything metrics related. It was strictly, hey, 2024 has been a pretty decent year. Personally, me and my partner Hamza have had a rocky road in terms of where the business has gone. But from a growth perspective for each individual employee, they've gone from, for example, Jonah joining around summertime for free to now being full time. To then, for example, Katia joining in August as a head of talent to now being someone that's changed our whole systems when it comes to finding UGC creators, to our senior video editor, Marzouk, who joined in January, who was a full-time engineer in Canada, to then becoming a full-time senior video editor for us around March time, to Ella, who came from an agency that I was aware of and I kind of just poached her, who was just a UGC copywriter, to now a creative strategist working for loads of different brands and doing content for brands in America and UK, to Adriel, who joined from Philippines, again from another agency, who was about less than 2 months into being in MTRX. So you get the point, right? Everyone was fresh. Everyone had their own story, and that was really important. And it was important that they were aware of that, and it was important that they were kind of appreciated and noticed. And that was the whole idea and the goal of the retreat. It was just to have fun, meet each other. Again, it's kind of like what they say, you don't know someone until you spend money with them, you break bread with them, you live with them, and you just spend more than, I'd say in my eyes, if you spend more than 7 days with someone, that's when you really get to know someone. So that was a goal of it. And I guess, it was a crazy trip. And before we go into the final month of Q4, December, we'll look back at this goals list. And I guess one of the last goals on here was be the face for creative ads, be the best agency there is from results, communications to team, and removing that agency stigma. So what do I really mean by that? So I guess being the face for creative ads is a big, bold statement to make. But at this point, we're, gearing towards the end of the year, and there's a lot of people that know of us. There's a lot of brands that know of us, that brands that also work with us. And I guess you could argue, well, how have you able to go from that 0 to 6-figure mark? And I think the important message from that is how we positioned ourselves from the start of the year. So there's a lot of agencies out there that would, I guess, position themselves as a UGC agency. We're an agency that makes content and we just hire other creators outside of, your network, and they will create this content by a script that we make. But how we positioned ourselves is, hey, we will make our content in-house for you with high production, and we will do everything ourselves personally. We will just hire the people we need, such as actors or whatever. And that was the biggest positioning for us to go from that 0 to 100. And it was definitely the biggest reason why we grew so fast, because we now separated ourselves from the norms. We now separated ourselves from every single agency. We're now not just every other agency that does the same thing, offers the same package, or offers the same service. We now had such a unique positioning in the agency space that we almost just became unbreakable, because we had near 12 months in the game. We had near 12 months of reps running high production on a month-to-month basis, on a week-to-week basis, where nobody could really touch us in the way that we were able to execute and perform these ads. Because don't get it twisted, these ads were coming out and looking really nice, but the question is, were they performing? Well, yes, month on month, these brands were getting results that some of them have never even seen before in their lives. So for us, that was the biggest turning point for us to get, like I said, closer to 350 than 100k. So I guess it was kind of like a what the fuck moment. So we surpassed our record month again. We ran up over 200k in revenue. How is this even happening a year later? What have we even done to get to this point? We just dropped some merch as well for the team, MTRX Media hats, t-shirts, you name it. But at this point, my series, or my goal of Operation USA, came to an end. I traveled a lot. I went from UK to New York to Dubai to UK, 2 days later, UK to Bali, then Bali back to UK, then 2 days later, Bali back to Dubai. So you can imagine, for me, I was crashed out from just traveling so much. But the month was so good and the retreat was so good that the momentum now from the team is super, super high. So you've gone from a team that you've just built in the last 6 months to now almost a team that just believes in everything that MTRX can do and that we can do and provide to them. And this really set us up nicely going into December and going into the end of the year. All right, cool. So we go into the last month of the year, December. And December, we just got back from the retreat. The momentum was really high. And I guess for me, it was about reflecting on the year and realizing how far we've come. Now, I've probably missed out a few things from, this whole month to month thing and quarter to quarter. But let's just say, as much as the wins were really, really high, the lows were really, really low. I think it came with a lot of sacrifices, a lot of changes, a lot of realizations that what we've done in 1 year, almost I don't think I probably realized we could do, but it came with a lot of just understanding that if you are able to just kind of set these goals and set these really ambitious targets, you can get, even if you don't get to that exact target, near that target. And I think it goes back to kind of what I say, online on my social stuff, is kind of just being very delusional. A lot of these things in this book, we'll pull out one thing now. Like I said, 500,000 in revenue minimum, a team of 5 or more, consistently running at 50k in revenue, working with 4 brands from our hit list, which is a list of brands we wanted to work with, one of them being Simmer, being the face of creative ads. I wouldn't say we are the face of creative ads right now, and there's a lot of very good agencies out there that are doing very, very good work, but we're definitely nearer to that point than we once were at the start of the year. So all these things just made me realize that, wow, if you actually spend that time to just focus on that one thing for just, even 6 months, but for us 12 months, you can make a solid impact. And that's exactly what we've done. And if you remember the first video I made on YouTube this time last year, and I said at the end of this video, I was like, listen, I'm gonna focus and lock in on this one thing. MTRX Media is now going to be my baby, and I'm not going to do anything else other than that. I'm not going to focus on any other side hustle. I'm not going to focus on making cash in any other way. Even if we don't make cash for 6 months, we are still going to focus on this. Because the fact was, if we were able to get by how we did for at least a year and a half, 18 months with no income, no team, no clients, no money, no nothing, no respect in the industry, then surely we can do it for another 6 months and 12 months. And that was a goal. And I could say we at least got to that point of hitting it. And all of that is to say, I guess, every goal in this book was hit. Now, if we go really briefly and quickly into like personal goals, outside of what I wanted to achieve in metrics, like one of the things was, taking my parents away on holiday, which we'll get into in a minute. The other one here was posting on YouTube and building a personal brand. And alongside that came with hitting 100 subscribers. I think we're at like 150 subscribers right now. And then we also had here crossing 500,000 with metrics, which like I said, we've done amongst a bunch of other things, but the ones that I can just pick out right now, as well as daily documenting, we documented every single day on Twitter for 365 days. Now that's content that will be online forever. And that's something that no one can ever take away. That's something that no one can ever take away from me. Just to be able to have that content and to be able to see that content at any point of my life, whether that is even content on here on YouTube or content on Twitter, it just shows you that if you focus and you lock in on one thing and you're able to just give it at least 6 to 12 months, you can make a difference. And I guess that was a reflection point for me in December. We ended off the year with me heading to Dubai and taking my family away for Christmas and New Year's. And I guess to be able to be in a position to do that, to pretty much pay for everything, take my mom on business class, was like a big personal goal of mine. Not something I personally put in my goal book to do at the end of the year. Was like, other than take my parents away, I didn't put here to take my parents away in business class, but I guess it's a goal of anyone's. To be able to treat your family or your loved ones is like a big thing. So to do that and just sit on the plane 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and realize, okay, this is what we do it for, it's just a reminder that whenever like things are low, whether it's, you have a bad month, you have a bad quarter, if you just look back on what was good or like, what went well, you just kind of focus back on that. You realize that's the kind of lifestyle you want to get back to. At the end of the day, if you want it that badly, you will get it. And it kind of just shows that, like I mentioned in my first video, you can go from losing it all to getting it all back again. But then the most hardest bit is keeping it. And that kind of goes into 2025, which is going to be a crazy year for us. Now, for us, 2024 was about building the foundations, understanding the market, figuring out if what we wanted to present to the agency space was going to work and this new business model was going to work. And I guess safe to say it is a proven product market fit. And I guess throughout the year, it was about improving that product. It was about building that team from 0 to what I thought was going to be 5 people, which is now 25 people to this day. It was then about having, or consistently hitting about 50K in revenue, which like I said, now is a consistent 6 figures in revenue, give or take 150 plus a month. And now we've done all of that, it brings us to 2025, which is how are we able to maintain that and how are we able to fix that, whether that's in revenue, whether that's in team, whether that's in brands, whatever that may be. There's a bunch of things that we want to achieve in 2025, which I'll probably say for another video and go through my goals there. 2025 is going to be a big one. It's about being able to personally be like a bit of a higher operator and focus more on bigger swings, such as how we're able to separate the revenue that we make now and apply that to other revenue streams. Could that be TikTok Shop? Could that be other maybe opportunities there in the market right now? How are we able to continue to build this culture of the team up? And just, before I wrap this up, I think one key takeaway from this whole video, if you're building a business or building a brand or an agency, is your team is like the biggest part of your business. Without a team, I'm nothing, my partner's nothing. There's no way we would even get to this point without the team. Yeah, and culture is just so important. So, like I said, at the start of the year, we didn't even know what culture meant, how we can build this culture. But it's really simple. Do things that you would want to do if you are working for a company. Maybe think about if you're working for a brand right now or a startup company, what kind of things would you want to see from your boss or the person that you work for? And I guess that's how we applied it to metrics. Maybe things not like a retreat. It could just be something as simple as a recap every single month. One thing I do every single month is recap the month, what went really well, and individually like almost at everyone in Slack. This person, you done really well because you done this. This person, you just joined this month, but you made such an impact doing this. I feel like a lot of the common denominators from the team is appreciation and realizing that within the company they're valued and they're making an impact. And just kind of doing it in an unconventional way. I guess you could argue as an agency, we're probably one of the most unconventional agency that I know of when it comes to communication, when it comes to the way we built our team, to even the way we talk on a daily basis. I think when you separate corporate to just a real life, you can really have a shift in the way your business runs. And I do believe outside of all the other growth, we've got to this growth by just being ourselves. I think if you're putting your corporate hat on or your corporate head on and you're being someone you're not, with your team or with the brands or communicating in just a way that you wouldn't communicate in real life. I don't really feel like that's real or authentic enough. And I think the way we've got to where we are now is just by being how we would be in real life. And I guess that wraps up 2024. And here's to 2025, which, like I said, is going to be a 10x of everything I've just mentioned. So think numbers, think team, think brands, just think 10x. And that is a plan. That is a goal for 2025. If anything, I'm thinking bigger villa, bigger budget, bigger retreat. I'm thinking bigger brands. And at the end of the day, we've done it for 1 year now. Can we do it for year 2? So I guess I'll be back on the 3rd of Jan 2026. And that wraps up the recap of 2024. Thank you for watching. Look out for this year where we're going to be posting a lot more content, from the retreat, which should be out already, to content with the team and a bunch of other shit. And I will see you guys soon.